Hey guys, how are you? I hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing another movie review. This movie is a science fiction horror film from the UK, English language, released in the year 2013, directed by Wariri Robinson, and this film is called The Last Days on Mars. So The Last Days on Mars is about an expedition of these astronauts who have gone to Mars in order to take specimens to determine whether or not there is life on planet Mars. So it's an age-old question that they believe they can actually answer. So it's taken 6 months to get here. They've been there for 6 months, and now it's 19 hours until they go back home. But unfortunately, on the last day here on Mars, tragedy is going to strike when one of the astronauts tells the captain that he has to do maintenance that he overlooked and that he's very sorry, but he has to do it right now. So the captain tells him to take one of the other men with him to actually help him, but what the captain doesn't know is that this astronaut is lying to him. In fact, he wants to actually collect some specimens that he's discovered, and he's not going to tell anyone else about it. It's because he wants the glory for himself. This is an opportunity to actually make a discovery that's going to change the course of history forever. So he goes there, and there are repercussions to his actions. There is a tragedy that occurs that basically has a devastating effect on the surviving members, is because there is a virus kind of illness that is unleashed that is turning people into these zombie-like creatures. So the journey back home has been severely damaged, and whether or not the surviving members can actually make it back intact is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on The Last Days on Mars. If you are a fan of science fiction horror, I can definitely see you appreciating this movie. Now whether or not you're going to rush back to see it again or rush out and tell your friends that this is a brilliant film remains to be seen. But I will say that it does have a lot of positives, is that it is very atmospheric. It actually feels like a science fiction film. When you see them on Mars, you can actually see the authenticity, that this is a very barren landscape, that this is an unknown landscape, and that unknown landscape creates a lot of fear and it creates a lot of panic within the viewer. And that's something I really liked, is that the movie does play on a lot of psychology as opposed to something you genuinely see. And so the psychology not only is this predicament that they're going to be facing, but it's also the predicament of leaving loved ones behind. So they've been gone for so long, and you could sense the pain. You can actually sense that they were broken as people, is because they're longing for things that are very familiar to them. So whether or not you're going to war or you're going overseas for an extended period of time, it does have an effect on a person, is that they've left their familiar surroundings and now they're trying to deal with that, and it can be very tormenting and can actually tear you up inside. And so the characters in this film, you actually feel that, and therefore you get a lot of sympathy for them, because they just want to go home, they just want to get this over and done with, but there are going to be problems that are going to prevent that sort of quick return back to where they are. And when you start to suspect that maybe they'll never return, you start to get that sense of fear, you start to get that sense of psychology in this claustrophobia, and the overall sense that, okay, if things go wrong, what the hell would I do in this situation? I can't exactly call for help, and help won't come, just around the corner. Help is, a long, long way away. It's going to take 6 months to get back home, so you can't exactly just say, okay, I'm going to run away from this danger, it's going to be okay. So when you're left in you're stuck in a corner, you have to fight back, and ultimately this is what these characters have to do. So I thought the dynamics within these characters was very interesting. I thought they were very likeable. It stays clear of the stereotypical sort of horror tropes, in that you've got someone you really hate, someone you really like, someone who's really funny. All those sorts of stereotypical qualities in a person in film has been swiped clear, and it's given you very real connections to these characters. So that one character in particular starts off as very unpopular, starts off as very annoying, and I thought to myself, okay, is this going to be one of those films where I'm going to absolutely despise this person to the point of wanting them to die? But then that character starts to evolve to a point where you think, okay, maybe she's scared herself, and so I don't hate her as much as I initially thought I would. So these characters do take somewhat of a three-dimensional form, and that's something I wasn't expecting from a film like this. So I thought this was going to be a standard outer space zombie film, but it was a little bit more. It doesn't really rely so much on the zombies themselves, it doesn't rely on violence, it just relies on the psychological impact that it's having on these astronauts. And even though something bad might not be happening at that particular moment, you still sense the pain and inner torment they have of wanting to go back to their families, of these men wanting to go back to their children, of the women who want to go back to their husbands, and that devastating effect that homesickness can bring. So the overall cinematography, as I said, very, very good. It feels like it had a very good budget. The acting was good. Liev Schreiber, who plays the main character, I thought was very, very interesting, is that he was likeable, but at the same time there were things that has happened in his very recent past that caused this sense of claustrophobia and these panic attacks, and I thought the panic attacks make the audience very uncomfortable too. So the psychology definitely is the driving force, and I think it was definitely the most interesting part of this film. The zombie effect makeup was very interesting. They were very vicious. There were some moments that were quite brutal, but they are few and far between, so it doesn't rely on cheap tricks, which is something that is a welcome breath of fresh air in a subgenre of science fiction horror that is quite lazy sometimes. I thought this movie really does know the psychology. That reminded me of the psychology of Alien and also that of Event Horizon. So it is a world of the unknown. The age-old question is, are we alone? And just the thought of, you know, maybe not being alone is terrifying in itself, and I think the movie really plays up on that. So the continuity, very good. I thought it never really outstays its welcome, but there is a little bit of a problem I had with that continuity, and this is where I go into my negatives. Now, the negative to this film isn't really a major negative, but it is a negative that will dampen the experience to some degree, is that this movie was straight to DVD, and you can understand why it was straight to DVDs, because although it never really gets boring, there is that sense of dullness to the film that doesn't really capture the audience as much as bigger screen films do. When you see in the cinema, they've got that X factor that really hits the audience in the stomach, and it really causes them to lose their breath, and you're just captivated by what's going on. But this movie doesn't have that force to really captivate the audience. It just makes you feel, okay, I'm not really getting bored, but I could be doing something else at the same time, is that I'm not really missing out on too much, is that it does have a lot of interest, but it just doesn't have that overall X factor that's needed to take it that one step further. So it's not a brilliant film, but having said that, it's not a bad film, and that's the only negative I could actually have in this film, is that it just doesn't have that one shot to the heart that needs to really revive it and really make it as animated as it really should be. So the X factor is missing in this film, but having said that, it never gets boring. I really like the way it finished. The special effects were great, the authenticity to the setting was great as well, and overall it's a movie that you could do a lot worse with. So if you are a fan of science fiction horror films, then definitely go out there and see Last Days on Mars, and as a result of all that, I'm going to give this film 3 stars. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later.